The glow Rhoda carried in the early years of her marriage to Damien was the kind of light that seemed to radiate from within. They were, to all outward appearances, the picture of a perfect couple. They completed each other's sentences, anticipated each other's needs, and built a life filled with shared laughter and dreams. But little did Rhoda know, that picture was about to shatter. Remember the pure, unadulterated joy she felt driving home from the hospital. The years of longing, the painful treatments, the prayers finally answered. That moment was supposed to be a turning point, a shared triumph that would solidify their bond. But Damien's reaction, it was a subtle shift, a barely perceptible tremor in what she thought was a rock-solid foundation. "You're pregnant," he'd said, the words lacking the explosion of elation she'd envisioned. "Wow, that's good. Just good." Rhoda desperately tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was in shock. Maybe the news hadn't fully registered. But as the days turned into weeks, and her belly swelled with the promise of new life, Damien's behavior became increasingly distant. He went through the motions, of course. He drove her to appointments, paid the bills, and even helped with chores around the house. But the spark was gone. The tender glances, the playful touches, the whispered endearments, they vanished, replaced by a polite, almost clinical detachment. She used to be his queen. Now, she felt like a roommate, a business partner, anything but the love of his life. At night, they lay in bed, a chasm of silence stretching between them. He always slept with his back turned, a physical manifestation of the emotional wall he was erecting between them. Rhoda would lie awake for hours, tears silently tracing paths down her cheeks, wondering what she had done wrong. Was she not beautiful enough anymore? Had she become too consumed with the pregnancy? Was she simply unlovable? The questions swirled in her mind, each one more painful than the last. She tried to talk to him. Once, she gently broached the subject, her voice trembling with vulnerability. "Damien, is everything okay? You seem different." He'd sighed, a weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of the world. "I'm just stressed with work, Rhoda. You know how it is. Stressed with work." Those 3 words became his shield, his explanation for everything. A convenient excuse to avoid intimacy, both physical and emotional. Rhoda wanted to believe him. She needed to believe him. So she poured her energy into nurturing the life growing within her, clinging to the hope that the arrival of their baby would somehow rekindle the flame that had once burned so brightly. 9 months crawled by, each day, feeling longer and lonelier than the last. Then, finally, on a quiet Tuesday morning, the contractions began. Even in the midst of labor, Rhoda couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Damien rushed her to the hospital, his movements efficient but devoid of genuine concern. He paced the waiting room, a ghost of his former self, while Rhoda endured hours of agonizing pain. And when their beautiful baby girl, Diamond, finally entered the world, Damien's reaction was underwhelming. He entered the room, gave Rhoda a perfunctory tap on the shoulder, and offered a neutral smile. He didn't hold the baby, didn't gaze at her with the adoring eyes of a new father. He barely even acknowledged her existence. He drove them home from the hospital, a silent driver ferrying precious cargo he didn't seem to value. Rhoda's mother, eager to embrace her new granddaughter, arrived shortly after, filling the house with the warmth and joy Damien couldn't seem to muster. They named the baby Diamond, a symbol of the precious gem she was, a beacon of hope in a darkening world. But even Diamond's arrival couldn't couldn't bridge the growing gap between Rhoda and Damien. He slept in the guest room, claiming Rhoda needed her rest. He did the bare minimum, paying the bills, buying diapers, asking about the baby's well-being, but never truly engaging. He never held Diamond, never looked at her with pride or tenderness. When she cried, he simply left the room, unable to bear the sound of his own child's distress. 6 months passed, 6 months of separate beds, stolen glances, and unspoken resentments. 6 months without a single moment of intimacy, not even a kiss. Finally, Rhoda couldn't take it anymore. She waited until Diamond was asleep, then approached Damien in their bedroom, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and desperation. "I miss you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Damien looked up from his phone, his eyes cold and distant. "I'm here, am I not? That's not what I mean, and you know it. It's been 6 months, Damien. You haven't even touched me." He sighed, a sound that spoke volumes about his lack of interest. "You needed time to heal. I didn't want to rush anything." But Rhoda knew that wasn't the truth. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong, and Damien was refusing to acknowledge it. That night, Rhoda cried herself to sleep, her tears soaking into the pillow, her heart breaking a little more with each silent sob, and Damien, oblivious or uncaring, snored softly behind her. The perfect marriage, once a shining beacon of love and happiness, was crumbling before her very eyes, reduced to a hollow shell of what it once was, and Rhoda was powerless to stop it. She was living a slow, agonizing death, trapped in a marriage that had become a prison, all because of the secret her husband was keeping. Life after divorce wasn't easy, but Rhoda was determined to rebuild. The 2-bedroom apartment, though smaller than her marital home, felt like a sanctuary. No more tiptoeing around Damien, no more silent dinners, no more pretending. It was just her and Diamond, a fresh start. She threw herself into her supermarket. The long hours were exhausting, but the work was a welcome distraction. She promoted her most loyal employees, delegated tasks, and even started an online delivery service that boosted sales. Slowly but surely, Rhoda began to feel like herself again, a strong, independent woman capable of anything. Diamond, thankfully, was too young to understand the complexities of the situation. She was a bright, bubbly child who filled Rhoda's days with laughter. Rhoda cherished every moment with her daughter, determined to provide her with a stable and loving environment, something she felt Damien had robbed them both of. Months passed. Rhoda focused on healing. She reconnected with old friends, took Diamond to the park, and even started painting again, a hobby she'd abandoned years ago. The sharp edges of her heartbreak began to soften, replaced by a quiet sense of resilience. Then, one ordinary afternoon, life threw her another cut. Rhoda was restocking the pasta aisle when she saw him. Tall, familiar, his dark hair slightly longer than she remembered. It was James, her James, the one who had vanished from her life a decade ago. Her heart leaped into her throat. "James," she whispered, hardly daring to believe her eyes. He turned, his eyes widening in recognition. A slow smile spread across his face, a smile that still had the power to make her knees weak. "Rhoda," he said, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down her spine. It was an awkward reunion, filled with hesitant smiles and unspoken questions. They ended up in Rhoda's office, catching up on the lost years. James explained that he'd been released from prison a few years ago and had been working quietly, rebuilding his life. He owned a small import business, supplying goods to local supermarkets. Rhoda, in turn, shared the story of her marriage to Damien, the joy of Diamond's birth, and the slow, agonizing unraveling of her relationship. As she spoke, she noticed James's eyes darkening with a mixture of sadness and anger. He listened intently, offering words of support and understanding. "I'm so sorry, Rhoda," he said, his voice laced with genuine emotion. "You didn't deserve any of that." In the weeks that followed, James became a regular fixture in Rhoda's life. He'd stop by the supermarket to chat, help her with errands, or simply offer a listening ear. He was a constant, reassuring presence, a reminder of a love that had been tragically cut short. He was careful not to overstep, never pressuring her or making demands. He simply offered his friendship and support, and Rhoda found herself drawn to his quiet strength and unwavering loyalty. Just as Rhoda began to feel a flicker of hope, a chance at happiness, she received a phone call that shattered her fragile peace. It was her best friend, Odiola, her voice trembling with concern. "Rhoda, I don't know how to tell you this," Odiola stammered, "but I heard that Damien has moved someone in." Rhoda's blood ran cold. Moved someone in? Moved? Who in a woman? And her son? They're living in your house. Rhoda, people are saying the boy calls him Daddy. The phone slipped from Rhoda's grasp, clattering onto the floor. She sat frozen, the words echoing in her mind. Damien had replaced her. He'd moved on with another woman, another family, in the very home they had shared. That night, Rhoda allowed herself to grieve. She cried until her eyes were swollen and her throat was raw. She felt betrayed, not just by Damien, but by the universe itself. Was she destined to be unhappy? Was she doomed to a life of heartbreak and disappointment? But amidst the tears, a spark of defiance ignited within her. She wouldn't let Damien's actions define her. She wouldn't let him steal her happiness. She would rise above this, stronger and more resilient than ever before. However, the universe wasn't done with Rhoda yet. Just when she thought she'd processed the pain of Damien's new relationship, another revelation surfaced, a disturbing secret that would shake the very foundation of her existence. This secret was linked to James, a past she hadn't even considered, and was about to emerge with devastating consequences. Okay, buckle up, guys, because this is where things get really crazy. We're about to dive headfirst into the shocking truth, the good confession, and the glimmer of hope that somehow, some way, emerges from the ashes. Get ready. It's a roller coaster. Remember how Rhoda's mum and Damien showed up at her door completely out of the blue? Well, Rhoda, understandably, was furious. She demanded to know why Damien was even there. Her mother, bless her heart, still clinging to the hope of reconciliation, pleaded with Rhoda to at least listen, as if there was anything left to listen to at this point. But then Damien, pale and trembling, finally speaks up. He said he came to ask for forgiveness. Forgiveness. After everything, Rhoda just stared at him, emotionless. He goes on, claiming he wasn't himself, that he was under a spell cast by Annabelle, the woman he moved in with immediately after Rhoda left. A spell. Seriously, that's the best he could come up with. I mean, come on. I know we are on YouTube, but I didn't know we were in a fairy tale. He continues with his ridiculous story about charms and witchcraft, saying he was basically into abandoning his wife and child. Rhoda, rightfully, wasn't buying it. She asked him, coldly, where Annabelle and her son were now. He said he sent them away, that the spell was broken, and that all he wanted was his family back. I can imagine Rhoda just standing there, completely numb. All the years of confusion, the quiet suffering, the feeling that something was terribly wrong. It was all about to come crashing down. Rhoda's mother, surprisingly, sided with Damien. This is where my heart genuinely broke for Rhoda. Her own mother, remembering her own painful abandonment, begged Rhoda to reconsider, to try again. "Do you know how many nights I cried raising you alone?" she asked, her voice cracking with emotion. "I don't want that for you, my daughter. Please, if there's any chance, just try." Damien, seizing the opportunity, stepped forward, promising to be the husband and father Rhoda and Diamond deserved. "No more lies," he swore. "No more pain. I'm begging you." Rhoda, for a moment, looked like she might actually consider it. But then, thank goodness, James walks in from the restroom, and the whole charade comes crashing down. James sees the scene. Damien, Rhoda's mother, the heavy atmosphere, and without missing a beat, he says, "Why don't you tell her the truth?" Rhoda's mom is shocked. "What are you doing here, James?" James, ignoring her, keeps his eyes locked on Damien. "Why didn't you tell her the real reason you suddenly woke up and sent the woman away? Were you truly under a spell?" Rhoda, completely bewildered, asks the question we're all screaming at the screen. "You two know each other?" James still ignores everyone else and says, "You've come here to beg. That's fine, but at least have the decency to be honest while doing it. Tell her what really happened, or I will." And that's when Damien crumbles. He lets out this long, shaky sigh, and the dam finally breaks. "Okay," he says, his voice barely a whisper. "I'll tell you the truth. Every filthy, shameful piece of it." He starts with the bomb nobody saw coming. He had low sperm count long before they got married, and he knew it. He'd been diagnosed with oligospermia, likely caused by his unhealthy lifestyle. Instead of telling Rhoda, he kept it a secret, hoping it would improve. He was afraid of losing her, of her leaving him if she knew he couldn't father a child. I can't even imagine the weight of that secret. The years of pretending, the fear of being less than in Rhoda's eyes. But what he did next, that's unforgivable. He admits that instead of facing his fears like a man, he made a monstrous decision. If he couldn't give Rhoda a child, he'd find someone who could, but in a way that would keep his secret hidden forever. He met James, a desperate man, fresh out of prison, and offered him money to impregnate Rhoda. He took Rhoda to a hotel, drugged her drink, and brought James into the room. He made sure it was dark so James wouldn't know who she was. He paid James, told him to disappear, and left Rhoda to wake up the next morning, clueless, thinking it was just another night with her husband. I am literally speechless. The level of deception, the violation, the sheer evil, it's beyond comprehension. I had to pause, writing, to drink a glass of water. This is the deepest part of the rabbit hole, but wait, there's more. Just before Rhoda confirmed her pregnancy, Damien ran into Annabelle, an ex he had abandoned. She told him she had their son, and he saw it as a chance to have a child. He moved Annabelle and the boy in, then discovered through a DNA test that the boy wasn't his biological son. Annabelle confessed she didn't know who the father was. He sent them away. Then Damien looks at Rhoda, kneeling. "I am sorry for everything. Rhoda, please forgive me." Rhoda is understandably beyond enraged. She can barely speak, then whispers, You drugged me." All Damien can do is beg. That's when Rhoda's voice cracks and says the line that just shattered me. So, you violated me instead. You brought a stranger into my body without my knowledge, just to protect your ego. Damien's pathetic attempts at justification mean nothing. Rhoda is done. She demands to know who the man was, the man who touched her while she lay unconscious, and that's when James steps forward. "It was me," he says quietly. "I'm sorry, Rhoda. It was me." He explains how he was at his lowest, fresh out of prison, broke and desperate. Damien offered him a fortune. He didn't know who the woman was. He did what he was paid to do. But afterwards, he waited. He followed Damien and Rhoda the next morning, and when he saw her face, his world collapsed. He knew he had unknowingly slept with his ex-fiancée. He used the money to start his business, but he watched Rhoda closely ever since. He planned the chance encounter at the supermarket. He just wanted to see her, to make sure she was okay. The room is heavy with silence. Rhoda, tears streaming down her face, finally understands everything. It wasn't just Damien's betrayal. It was James's involvement. The cruel twist of fate that had brought them together in such a horrific way. But here's the thing, guys. Rhoda isn't broken. She's been through hell, but she's not defeated. Damien's plea for forgiveness is rejected. "I forgive you, but leave," she says, her voice firm. "I will never return to you. Diamond and I have a new life now." And with that, Damien, completely and utterly defeated, shuffles out of the house. Now, this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Stay with me, I promise. It's worth it. It's worth it.